Valheim has been a bit of a hit on Steam this week, and for good reason. A huge open world adventure that challenges you to survive and thrive in the wilderness of Midgard. It's like Minecraft, but with Vikings. It can be a lot to take in at first though, which is why we've put together these 19 beginner's tips that Odin himself would be proud of. Let's start with the absolute basics. Always talk to the lovely Hugin if you see them. In Norse mythology, Hugin, along with Munin, are two ravens that fly around Midgard, bringing information back to their master, Viking god Odin. But in Valheim, they're passing info on to you. Probably for some higher purpose and because Odin told them to, we're guessing. But anyway, Hugin, which means thought in Old Norse, while Munin means memory or mind, will give you survival tips and point you roughly in the right direction of what you should be doing and prioritizing at the start of the game. And in a huge open world like this, that really is a huge help. Another very basic beginner's tip, and one that Minecraft players can somewhat relate to: when you first start and have no tools, find broken branches on the floor or punch saplings to get enough wood to craft your first essential tool, an axe. You'll know you're punching the right thing, because if you punch the wrong thing, you'll see the damage being done is 0. There seem to be a lot of branches and small stones littering the ground in the area you spawn in when you start the game, and we're sure that's no accident by the developers. So you should easily find enough resources to craft yourself an axe, club, and torch at least, which should be plenty to get you started in the meadows. This is another simple tip, but it took us a while to figure out and is worth knowing, so we're passing it on to you. You can split stacks of items by holding down the left shift key as you click on them in your inventory. This makes sharing and storing items a bit easier. Like when your teammate asks for a specific amount of flint or leather scraps for a recipe, you don't have to hand over your entire stash. Now, mark our words here. Watch out when you're cutting down trees. Just like in real life, if you get bonked on the head with a falling tree trunk, it is going to hurt. A lot. Have we been killed by a tree in Valheim before? Well, we couldn't possibly say. But also, yes. So maybe shout timber or something next time. I don't know, just in case. Just a thought. At the start of the game, you'll need to scavenge lots of resources, including small rocks and flint. Small rocks shouldn't be too hard to find as they tend to be dotted all over the place, but in our experience they appear more frequently on steep areas of land, quarry-like locations that tend to have this rocky texture. These areas can be a little tricky to navigate, but if you climb up or even slide down them just right, you'll be picking up a lot of rock in no time at all. Flint seems to occur mostly near the water's edge, so check riverbeds, streams, and also banks of lakes, where it's in plentiful supply. Don't just check on land either. You'll often find it submerged just below the water's surface too, and it definitely tends to show up in groups. So when you find one piece of flint, keep an eye out for more nearby. Deer are probably one of the trickier animals to get resources from near the start of the game, due to the fact that they run away fast at the first sign of danger. Crafting a bow definitely makes it easier for you to bring them down, but it can take a little while for you to get to that stage. So, in the meantime, and if you see the opportunity to, try and chase a deer into shallow water. This will slow the usually super speedy creature right down and allow you to club it to death relatively easily, you absolute monster. But hey, gotta get that leather. When you do eventually craft yourself a crude bow, keep in mind that you're going to have to aim way high if you're taking aim at a deer from a distance to compensate for drop. So it does take a little while to get the hang of, but the good news is a single hit will likely take them out immediately. Oh, but a word of warning on our fun purposefully slow the deer down in water technique. If a deer suddenly decides to swim out to the sea, do not chase it. Swimming reduces your stamina, and when that runs out, you'll take damage until you die. In other words, if you swim out too far, you won't be swimming back. And worst of all, you probably won't be able to reclaim your lost inventory items if you do. This is something you might have already noticed, but it's good to have confirmation. Raising your skill levels, that lovely burst of golden fuzzy light that happens every so often, happens automatically. You just perform actions over and over again to improve your understanding of them, a bit like how it works in Skyrim. So although you might not be the best at sprinting or using your axe to begin with, like anything in life, it gets better with practice, and eventually you'll level up those skills and your stamina won't be hit quite so hard by all that running after wild boars. Tools and armour get a lot of use out in the Norse wilderness, but incredibly luckily, they can be repaired at any workshop you've built and it will cost you nothing. That's right, 0 resources. As long as you have a workbench, go up to it to interact, and then just click on the hammer icon to the right, keep clicking for each tool that needs a spruce up, and you'll clang your way through all the repairs using no resources at all in no time. Basically, if an axe breaks, don't bother crafting a new one, just head back to your workshop and repair it, at no extra cost. Good as new. If you like things to be neat and enjoy a bit of landscaping, and hey, who doesn't? Craft a hoe as soon as you're able to, and use this to flatten the ground in an area you want to build your base. This means you don't have to find a natural clearing and can expand at any time to include extra buildings if you want to. You can also use the hoe to raise the earth as well, for aesthetic reasons or just to cover any gaps where your structure may seem like it's floating. Be aware though that this will actually use stone as a resource, so you'll need to have a stock of plenty of rocks if you plan to do a lot of terraforming. Structures within Valheim obey the laws of gravity. Sort of. In Minecraft, you can build impossible structures that float or that are held up via one small column and a whole load of magic. In Valheim, no such luck. When you're building complex structures, you will often need to put in supporting beams to stop your buildings falling down. This mainly applies to rooftops rather than floors, but it's worth bearing in mind as you'll often need more wood resources than you first think, and you'll probably need more floor space than you originally planned for to make sure you can fit everything inside comfortably. On that note, one of the first things you'll need to do once you've started building structures is to make a bed and select it as your spawn point. This way, when you die, you'll always spawn at your base rather than having to trek all the way back from when you first spawned at the start of the game. To make a bed work as a spawn point, you'll need to do the following. You'll need a working campfire nearby, and you'll need to have a roof over your bed. So choose your setup carefully, especially if you're playing with friends and have to accommodate for multiple beds being under one roof and close to a fire all at once. Of course, once you've built a base, terraformed the land, gathered up some resources and crafted some tools, you'll be striking out for an adventure. When heading out to fight bosses or going on long missions, it's perhaps worth packing enough materials to quickly build a workshop just before things get dangerous. If you do this, then you can quickly build a simple forward base closer to the action. Put a bed/spawn point in there, and if you accidentally do die, you'll avoid having to repeat the huge trek back from your base, which can be aggravating as anything if you had struck out and travelled miles to end up where the action is. However, everyone knows beating down bosses is much more fun with friends. And if you are playing with friends, here's one tip that you should not skip. Don't forget to tell everyone playing to bring up their map screen and click the button on the bottom right corner that allows everyone else to see their location on the map and minimap. This feature is not turned on by default, and it really will make all the difference. In Valheim, it is inevitable. Everyone will get distracted constantly and run off in completely opposite directions in order to collect whatever individual resource it is that they themselves are lacking. Being able to keep tabs on your teammates without them having to describe where they are will make it so much easier when it comes to meeting up again to take on those tougher challenges. But you know, if anyone gets out of line or takes too long harvesting or turns out to be a bit of a loot hoover, I can think of some people that fit that description, then you can also toggle PvP damage on and off in your menus by clicking the 2 swords icon. But no one would ever want to hurt their friends, right? Back to the subject of pathfinding, you can place map markers on the map so you can easily remember where to find things like troll caves, good farming spots, burrows, and so on. To do this, simply click on one of the 5 icons to the bottom right of the map, and then double-click on the map in the location that you want to mark. Easy. If you've made an error, you can remove that mark by right-clicking. Unfortunately for multiplayer, these map markers only show up for the person making them and are not shared across all maps on the server. But a decent workaround if you do go out exploring is that if you find a cool burial chamber or a copper deposit, let everyone know in chat, wait around a little bit, and then they can look at their maps and mark your location down with their own marker before you move on. Teamwork.
Oh, it's huge!
Oh, and about teamwork, that first time that you and your team have an encounter with a troll, we highly recommend placing at least one of your friends between you and the troll at all times to ensure your maximum chance of survival. I mean, sure, it's not the most ethical of moves, and you may lose friends over it, but those trolls swing like really hard.
Okay.
Piss off! Piss off! I only just got here!
He's got a bum.
It is worth knowing, actually, that in combat and in hunting, certain weapons work better for particular types of prey. Clubs and axes work well on greylings, boars and skeletons, for example, while bows are best for deer and birds. Just make sure and test weapons on different enemy types to get a feel for which is most efficient. And don't forget to repair everything anytime you're back at your base. Upgrading tools and weapons is another subject entirely, one that we'll hopefully get to in another video. You need a snack.
Oh yeah, I've got snacks. I'm just waiting for them to run out.
Food is an extremely important resource in Valheim, as it's how you'll keep your strength and health up in the wilderness. When you first start out, you'll find a lot of berries like raspberries and blueberries out in the meadows, but you may be surprised to learn that your avatar gets full after a single bite. Look, they're just trying to maintain a balanced diet because it turns out you can only eat one piece of the same food at once. But you can stack up to 3 different foods in one sitting, like meat, mushrooms, and berries. It's important to keep a selection on you at all times, especially before and after combat. The fuller your stomach is, the more stamina you will have and the faster your health will regenerate. And don't forget to roast those joints of raw meat that you pick up on the fire as an especially good source of health. Just don't leave them on there too long or you'll end up with coal. And that's pretty much it. Except, monsters are more plentiful at night, so maybe don't go thrashing off into the forest in the dark. Have a lovely sleep in your nice warm bed by the fire instead. I mean, that's just good life advice, to be honest. Anyway, these are just some simple tips to get you started in Valheim, but we should have some more advanced tips for you very soon. Until then, give that subscribe button a tap and check out some of our other videos on screen now. Happy adventuring, fellow Vikings! Bye!